Front page of a lot of the papers today, those Office for National Statistic figures that came out just before 10 yesterday, are showing excess deaths. They are basically, other than the years 2020 and 2021, the peaks of the COVID pandemic, they're the highest in 50 years in terms of the number of people who are dying each week, more than would be expected due to the demographics of the country. This is all being blamed by a lot of the usual suspects as, well, this is all because the NHS is collapsing because it's got a lack of funding, a lack of staff. But you will have a lot of concerns that actually it's not just that, and a lot of this will be down to deliberate government policy over the last few years.
Yes, and remember that not only were we subjected to the lockdown, which has its own direct effects on health, mental health, physical fitness and so on, but in addition, the NHS closed much of its services almost in March for a very long period. Yeah. There was a period where some hospitals, or many hospitals, were at something like 60 to 70% capacity. And that was done on a false perspective, the false perspective being that there was likely to be a very large number of middle-aged people who were in hospital because of COVID, when in fact, before the lockdown happened, infections we now know were going down. And in addition to that, it was known at the time through things like the Diamond Princess that there was a massively increased risk as you got old and to people with pre-existing mortality. So the need for that to happen was highly questionable at the time. And despite the fact that this was known from late 2020 or from mid-2020 and could have been predicted in early 2020, the same thing was done in 2021.
Yeah, and again, it was predicted. I can remember on my show, by sort of May 2020, we were talking to cancer experts like, in fact, I think April 2020, at Carol Sakura, who were worried, and major cancer charities saying, this is a problem. People aren't coming forward. We're not getting as many people being referred to consultants for cancer treatment. And we already knew at that point that people were not coming forward. And this is the terrifying thing. People, politicians, and indeed the mainstream media, yes, you know who you are, who are all saying now, oh, isn't this awful? I mean, no one could have predicted this. Well, it was predicted, it was predictable, and people were telling you about this within a couple of months of the lockdown.
Yes, and not only that, but of course this was predicted in the pre-pandemic plans.
Which is why you didn't have lockdowns, because that was the whole point, because it had all these knock-on long-term effects.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you look at the effect on the NHS, so you talk about the risk of the NHS collapsing, that doesn't mean the NHS collapsing. It means the NHS is unable to cater for everyone. The NHS is always unable to cater for everyone. That's why it has waiting lists. Otherwise, it would treat everyone immediately. So that's a logical fallacy in any event. If you are talking about a risk of the NHS not being able to treat enough people, you've got to look at the long term too. Because if you're then not treating people for cancer or putting people off going to the GP or making it difficult to get consultancies or so-called elective surgery cancelling that, which means, of course, it will have to be done at a later stage. You are building up those problems, which means the NHS, again, will, in your words, but not correctly, collapse, i.e. it will not be able to treat enough people. And that's exactly what's happening now. It's exactly what I predicted, is exactly what you predicted.
And again, what's fascinating is the solution from NHS bosses and big NHS supporters, once again, is that we all sort of have social distancing, work from home, wear these utterly pointless masks, and sort of stay away from each other, so that we can basically give the NHS a bit of breathing space, thereby once again building up more problems as people get fatter and they drink more and they're less active and have less social interaction. Therefore, what a surprise, we've got loads and loads of, in particularly young children as well, who've just not been exposed to the sort of germs, the viruses, the bacteria and things that they should have been exposed to, which actually build up their immunity. I mean, it is. I would love that we'd been wrong. I wish that we'd been wrong, Francis. I wish that people like you who campaigned against these from such an early stage, certainly before I did, wish we'd been wrong. But every single day, watching everything play out in terms of the damage mentally, physically, economically, in every other way, socially, to our country as a result of these policies, I don't know about you, I'm getting more and more angry about it.